Sometimes the cats that need us most are the ones everyone else has given up on. This is the story of a little guy named Crusty, who went from unadoptable to utterly unstoppable, all because one person refused to listen when they said no. It all started with a casual visit to a shelter. No plans, no expectations, just someone walking through the doors on a random day without any real intention of leaving with a new family member. But then, in one of those cages, there was this small cat who looked like life had completely worn him down. Defeated, that's the only word that fit. While other cats might have been playing or meowing for attention, this little one just sat there with an expression that seemed to say he'd stopped hoping for anything good to happen. And in that moment, seeing that tiny defeated face, the decision was instant. This little guy was coming home. But here's where things got complicated. When Krusty's future mom said she wanted to adopt him, the shelter staff had a very different reaction than expected. They asked if she was sure about this choice, which is never a great sign. Then came the explanation. Crusty was considered unadoptable. His medical condition was simply too complicated, too demanding, too much for most people to handle. The shelter had essentially written him off as a permanent resident, a cat who would likely spend his life with them, not because he wasn't lovable, but because his needs were seen as too overwhelming. Most people would have walked away at that point, maybe looked at an easier cat, one without all the baggage and medical issues. But not this time. Instead of backing down, Krusty's soon-to-be mom was even more determined. For 2 entire weeks, there were daily visits to that shelter. 2 weeks of showing up to spend time with a cat who, frankly, wasn't even interested in the attention. Because Crusty definitely wasn't making this easy. He wasn't one of those instantly grateful rescue cats you see in viral videos. He didn't want to be cleaned. He got upset about the eye drops. He was grumpy, resistant, and made it very clear that he wasn't impressed by this persistent visitor. But something started shifting. Slowly, as the days passed and the visits continued, Crusty began to soften just a little. He started becoming slightly more receptive to affection, opening up in small ways that suggested maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to trust again. Finally, Crusty came home. There was some expectation that he might be timid at first, maybe hide under furniture for a few days, like many cats do in new environments. That assumption couldn't have been more wrong. Crusty walked into that house and immediately declared himself royalty. He became the king of the house, and he wore the crown with absolute confidence. This supposedly unadoptable cat with complicated medical needs transformed into a tiny dictator who ruled his new domain without question. Then came an interesting twist. Foster kittens arrived on the scene. These were temporary residents, babies who needed care before finding their forever homes. Crusty was having absolutely none of it. He wanted nothing to do with them. He would hiss whenever they came near, making his feelings abundantly clear. It seemed like jealousy, honestly. Here was Crusty, who'd finally found his kingdom, and now there were these tiny usurpers demanding attention. He kept his distance, watching them from afar like a suspicious monarch, observing potential threats to his throne. But kittens have a way of breaking down walls. Over the course of about a month, something beautiful started happening. Crusty and the babies began playing together. Turns out, the kittens actually appreciated Krusty's attitude. They weren't put off by his grumpiness. They found it endearing. Soon they were constantly together, curled up in bed like a little furry pile. The kittens always let Crusty win their games, showing him a deference that seemed to heal something in him. These tiny foster cats were teaching Crusty something he'd maybe forgotten or never learned. They were teaching him how to actually be a cat again. Watching Crusty fall completely in love with those kittens changed everything. The decision came naturally. These babies weren't going anywhere. They were being adopted too. The foster case became a forever case because Crusty had made it clear that this was his family now. And the transformation that followed was remarkable. Crusty started looking better, physically healthier, and more vibrant. His energy increased in ways that seemed impossible for a cat who'd once been labeled too complicated to adopt. He blossomed. There's really no other word for it. This defeated little shelter cat who nobody wanted became a thriving, energetic king surrounded by his devoted kitten subjects. Looking back, it's impossible not to wonder what would have happened if that adoption hadn't gone through. Where would Crusty be now if someone hadn't walked into that shelter randomly and refused to take no for an answer? Would he still be sitting in that cage, looking defeated, considered too much trouble for anyone to bother with? The thought is genuinely difficult to contemplate, because the Crusty who emerged, the confident king with his kitten family, the cat who blossomed into health and happiness, that cat was always there. He just needed someone to see past the unadoptable label and the complicated medical needs. Crusty's story is a tale of persistence, of refusing to accept someone else's limitations, and of how the right family can transform everything. Sometimes, the most complicated cases become the most rewarding. Sometimes, the cat everyone gives up on just needs one person who won't. And sometimes, a grumpy little king and a bunch of kittens create the most unexpected and perfect family imaginable.